This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. This is our ornery edition of The Baseline. We got some really interesting topics taking place as we enter into the second week of the NBA season, which has been jam-packed with a lot of, great NBA basketball play, some, just really awesome performances from some of, the NBA's great players, some great quality matchups, Shaw. Listen, let it not be said, man, if everybody is, kind of gearing themselves up for the Emirates NBA Cup, which is going to be taking place this upcoming week or probably in about a week's time. Yep. It's like, these guys, man, they putting in that work. So, and there's some great games that are going to be taking place, around that time frame as well too. I'm sure at some point we'll even be speaking to that a little bit, but let it not be said, man, NBA does not disappoint. Even after tip off, it went from tip off to tick off.
I like that.
When it comes to some of the stuff that's been going on right now with some of these NBA players.
I think very well said. We have a lot of injuries, unfortunately, to kind of get to. But as you alluded to, tempers are already flaring across. And it's interesting when pop culture kind of like bleeds its way into the NBA's overall ethos as well, too. So we'll get into a little bit of that and some really interesting comments and some things happening around some of the premier superstars, international superstars in our game. This is going to be a fun one, man. A little bit ornery. We're not going to always be taking the high road here, I think, on this one. We got some things to say.
Absolutely. Look, quick lead off, Shaw. Did you see that play? Celtics versus Hornets. Jayson Tatum.
Williams.
Yeah. I mean, what's going on, right? Like even Jalen Brown spoke to. He's like, yeah, man, I thought them guys were friends. Apparently not. He's like, homie came over and basically lit him up like Ronnie Lott lights up, you know what I'm saying, a wide receiver trying to go through his middle of the field. I don't even know what was up with that. Now, I understand that the speculation behind that was because of, I guess, the way that Jayson Tatum had rebounded and just basically flicked off LaMelo Ball like he was a tick on his jersey or something. But I didn't think it warranted homie coming over, 3 lanes falling down Michael Douglas style, just totally just running, chucking dude almost into the announcer's table. That's just crazy.
Well, Grant Williams is a wild dude. Let's say that. He's one of the enigmatic characters in our league. Draymond Green immediately took to Twitter and, calling him a goofy and, all of that stuff. Goofy was the term of the weekend as well, too, if you're following some of the break stuff that we'll get into as well.
He's like, look, if you're going to do it right.
If there's somebody who knows about, clocking somebody, there's no doubt. Yeah, but a weird situation. Whatever's going on there with Grant and JT, it's not really of any concerns. The Charlotte Hornets are one place and the Celtics are in another space. And the Celtics, I think they know they're going to get some of people's best shots, both figuratively and literally.
The one person that I probably would not want on the wrong side of it is Jalen Brown. There's something about Jalen, man. Jalen, like a quiet dude, man. He's the kind of person that I don't want to be on the wrong side of. You know how he's just all real casual, and then out of nowhere he just explodes. And he's a very strong individual.
He had the altercation with Duncan Robinson last year as well too. Mm-hmm. So I think he's shown that he's about that action. If people actually do want the smoke, otherwise let sleeping dogs lie. Yeah, he's got a humidor. If they all want that smoke, he'll air it out real quick for them. He'll make it really be known. And I especially appreciate the fact that Jaylen Brown calls to that, because that lets us know that, no matter what people may perceive or think, those two, they're tight, right? Like they've been through the ups and downs, obviously gotten a championship. But, seeing Jaylen Brown stand up for his people, for standing up for Jayson Tatum and things like that, that just speaks to on a deeper level that, it doesn't matter if them two are best friends. I'll still go through you. You know what I mean? So yeah. I respect that a lot. Anyway, as we're saying, the ticked off edition of The Baseline, Cal Lee Warrenshaw. So we appreciate everybody hopping on board with us this week. Be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at Game Face Lead the show
handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. Go to www.thebaselinenba.com in order to see and hear all of the latest episodes of the Baseline being dropped. And if you see us on YouTube, the blue and white logo, that's the 19 Media Group family, 19 Media Group in these content streets. Go to www.19mediagroup.com in order to not only check us, but also the great family of content creators that are part of the 19 Media Group family. Shaw, let's get right into some of the injuries, news and notes that's taken place in the association. There's a ton of injuries that have taken place already within the first 2 weeks in the NBA, and some key players going down. Paolo Banchero for the Orlando Magic has a oblique and is out indefinitely. I know everybody is obviously aware of the fact of Kawhi Leonard. He's been gone since the beginning of this season. Scottie Barnes suffered an orbital fracture, so he's gone for 3 weeks at least. For the Pacers, Isaiah Jackson, that's a big blow, as far as depth on that team. They're just starting to come into their own. He's out for the year with an Achilles injury. CJ McCollum and Herb Jones for the Pelicans, both suffering injuries, are out 2 to 4 weeks. Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, respectively for the Grizzlies, are going to be week to week, but out of their lineups. And Bojan Bogdanovic is out for at least a month. So a lot of key players, they're going to be gone for a significant amount of time. It's interesting, Shaw, because when you really look at it, to me, the one that stands out the most is the Paolo Banchero injury for the Orlando Magic. Even though this is a feisty team, you can clearly see Banchero has taken that next step, and it sucks because he just dropped a 50-piece, during the week. And for him to be out now for this period of time, which I just think is a critical stretch of games where the Orlando Magic, this point last year, made some serious strides, put up those win totals, got themselves in a really good space where they're able to maintain for the course of the year. It'd be interesting how they're going to be able to manage without Banchero in their lineup.
Yeah, Orlando is the biggest of the injuries, especially they're expected to be the best team of all the teams that we mentioned here in general. They already lack scoring punch. And while I think KCP has been a nice addition to them, he's not going to make up what Banchero has been able to do. So now it becomes incumbent upon,
piece in KCP.
Say that again?
You don't see a 50-piece in KCP?
No. I mean, maybe if you're playing in 2K.
KCP and KFC almost as similar. So,
right. But it's time for Anthony Black, in essence, to be able to step up. Franz Wagner, who had a not a bad start, but kind of like a middling start, I think, to the season. Wendell Carter Jr. can give them some offense, a little bit, from the front court presence as well. So those are the guys I think are going to have to step into this space. Cole Anthony as a microwave scorer coming off the bench. No one person is going to be able to do what Banchero did, especially from the scoring side, but also some of the rebounding and the play creation that he was doing, at that wing and kind of like forward position. So I'm concerned about the Orlando Magic here. But they do not have, I think, the requisite pieces in place, and this is to sustain a long-term injury. So when you say out indefinitely, yeah, it could be 2 weeks, could be 3 months. We don't really know, I think, at this stage. So hopefully he's back, sooner than later. And for me, the other injuries, two key things. Scottie Barnes in Toronto, the beginning of the season, the team that really needs to kind of get things together. Really, really rough. So now they can't continue to build the continuity. Emmanuel quickly has already started the season on the shelf. RJ Barrett started the season on the shelf. He's back now, but playing well. Gray Dick is into the starting lineup. But now they can't build around what is their centerpiece, and Scottie Barnes here now for at least 3 weeks to a month. And that's just when he'll be reevaluated. So for Toronto, who had playing hopes, it's going to be a little bit of rough sledding. And then finally for me, I'm going to just kind of hit this in two parts. New Orleans and Memphis. I don't know if there are two teams that have been more injured in the last 2 years. I think we probably need to do some research on that, but they seem to always have something going on with it. Zion and BI and CJ McCollum always has something. Herb Jones is now, as you alluded to. They just cannot get right. Luckily for Memphis, they've been able to get some pretty good draft picks, and they have some reserves on their staff or on their team that have been able to pick up the proverbial slack. But now back to New Orleans, I think it's going to be BI and Zion time, as long as those two can stay healthy, to do some of the heavy lifting while CJ and Herb Jones and Trey Murphy are also out.
Yeah, I think you have to feel, enamored if you're the Memphis Grizzlies that you have Ja back. Knock on wood, Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be healthy because, he has the injury bug as well, too, at times. But they have a deep team, Shaw. I was very impressed with the Memphis Grizzlies. And, you were high on them in the preview about this being a team that people should not be sleeping on. So I would be intrigued to see how much they can continue to keep that going, albeit having that shooting firepower in Desmond Bane on the team and the feistiness of Marcus Smart, defensively and really to help lengthen that roster is obviously going to be helpful for Jenkins and the staff. The team, I think, to your point, that I worry about is the Pelicans, albeit though that I've seen where the Pelicans seem to thrive without having, CJ McCollum be that guy. I think maybe from a stability standpoint, as a point guard kind of player, he should, he needs to be there. But I'm seeing that this Pelicans team seems, and now maybe it's just the scheduling, but I've seen where this Pelicans team, having Zion healthy and having Brandon Ingram healthy, I think certainly lends to, giving them the ability to be a more dominant front court team. Definitely, not from behind the arc are they thriving, but I think they may be able to get away with it with the type of matchups that they've had so far. But again, we'll see of those two teams who can continue to thrive with some of their key guys. Not a part of it.
And don't forget for them, DeJounte has already he's been out. He got hurt the first game of the season. Right. So, 3/5 of their starting lineup, are on the shelf here. In addition to Herb Jones and as I alluded to, Trey Murphy. So whichever one you think is starting between Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, those are all key role players for that New Orleans team. So tough sledding here for Willie Green.
Absolutely, man. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. All right. So now that we're talking about the pain, the hurt, clearly there's still a lot of pain and hurt going on in Toronto. And what I mean by that is, Toronto's number one, resident fan ambassador, he is the North, essentially.
Self-proclaimed, but
yes, self-proclaimed that, what I'm saying? Our man Drake. Let it not be said, he's let his onerous ways show, expressing how he feels about DeRozan. Excuse me. Because, if people have paid attention and, the hip hop culture and the NBA culture are always commingling. DeMar DeRozan appeared on Kendrick Lamar's "They Not Like Us" video. And Drake made it be known in a space where it's kind of like, all right, if the Toronto Raptors is basically decided or eventually will retire his jersey, which is apropos because he is the cornerstone of that success that led them to getting to this point where, despite what happened, him and Kyle Lowry were the foundation, right? They were the reason why Drake felt like I can now rep, the six one more time. But now he's like, oh, if they put DeRozan's banner up there, I'll climb up there and rip that down. I love DeRozan's response to that, by the way. That was awesome.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand. Look, man, I get it. Your fandomness is showing, so to speak, because but to me, I think it's misplaced just because he decided to be on a video with someone he probably listens to more than you. Now you're showing your petty, right? Now you're showing your petty. That's me. I'm just saying he's showing a little bit of pettiness there by him speaking on something that's more basketball related than it really is related to the fact that he has an alliance, with an artist that he is in beef with.
The thing about this is DeRozan is from the West. So, I just don't understand.
He's from California.
It doesn't make any sense. And while DeRozan has made his hay, as an NBA player, he is the Raptors' all-time leading scorer. So the idea of his jersey being retired there at some point is not far-fetched in any capacity. And so for Drake to kind of say what he says, because he's still salty about, losing an air quote rap battle, if you will, over the summer, which is now months old, and to be, ice grilling him the entire time of the game, and they called him a P word and all this other stuff like that too. Like I don't know, man. Drake is on some different stuff right now. I think, and as you alluded to, a little bit more ornery than he should be at this point. You got to let stuff like that go. DeRozan really got nothing to do with any of this. And of all things, on the night that Vince Carter's jersey is being retired too. So what is happening, bro? Like it just doesn't make sense. But it's fun to kind of talk about.
So Drake is gonna call the P word out when Serena Williams is out there at a game. You know what I'm saying? Like, how far do you want this thing to be taken? I'm not, listen, I get it. You know, you feel some kind of way if you actually are in rap beef with somebody and you know that there are artists who are actually, but that's how it's always been. Like, if you put a microphone in front of half of these guys, they'll probably tell you right now they got Kendrick Lamar, you know what I'm saying, in their iMusic or whatever playing devices they're listening to before they're going game time
Well,
over
you know
Drake.
what? I would
You know,
actually,
what does
I'm
that
only going to
matter?
interrupt to disagree because I think the majority of the league probably are very big Drake fans and so forth and so forth. You even
Right.
heard, like you would say, basketball when they were playing They Not Like Us overseas in France and whatever the case, you'd be like, oh, you see Steve Kerr, like Stephen Curry, like, oh man, I'm kind of tired of this or whatever like that. And he's in the West, you know, obviously Golden State, not, you know, it's not LA or Compton, but same time, I think Drake has the hearts, but he's maniacal in the way that he wants everybody. He wants everything, and I mean that's made him be successful. That, you know, that level of greed. But now we're past greed, and now we're at the point of petty. You know, and DeRozan has really nothing to do with their rap battle. Appearing in Kendrick Lamar's
But
video
the point
that's
that
months old now. Who cares, bro? Like let's keep it pushing.
I get you, but the only point that I'm making to this, Shaw, is that once you start airing things out in spaces that you don't even abide by or apply to, like you don't play professional basketball, right? What they're talking about, what they are honoring DeMar DeRozan with is something that you had no impact on, and you're saying you're going to go and you're basically going to crap on that because of the fact that he jumped on a video with the guy that you got beef with. That's stupid. You get what I'm saying? It would be different if the playing field was level in something completely where the both of them had something to do with it. But as far as I'm concerned, when Drake goes out and says those kind of things, I don't think he recognizes that he's speaking to something that he was never applying himself completely to be. He never applied himself to be a part of the NBA. Like, it would be different if, let's say, for example, it was J. Cole. You know what I'm saying? I can understand that because J. Cole genuinely tried to play in the NBA. Like, he tried out and wanted to do that. That's all I'm saying. Like, I have no problem if you want to air out your beef, you want to speak some kind of way. You got beef with DeRozan, no problem. But to say when DeRozan, by the city and by the organization who recognizes this, right? The organization paid him to go out there and perform every single night and to give you a reason to be there. They are saying we're going to honor you because you are among one of the greatest players as a Raptor. And now you're going to basically come out and say something like, oh, I'm just going to go down and rip down that banner because, you know, you don't deserve it because I got beef with the fact that you jumped on a video.
I mean, yeah, I don't know the full context of when it came up because, again, it was VC's night and they were saying that DeRozan will probably get the same honor at some point. So to even preemptively say that, you don't know when that would be years from now. Like,
right.
All of that should be squashed. So again, it shows a level of immaturity, you know, on one of the great, you know, hip hop stars and, you know, currently today. But hey, that's what makes it fun, man. Drake is always going.
No, but I like I said, I love what DeRozan said. He's like, look, man, it's a long climb up. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
and then plays the clip of Friday. You know what I mean? When he go, I'll be talking again. So with the Debo stuff. So DeRozan is from the West. Even utilizing that Friday clip, I think was, you know, indicative of that. So a lot of fun here for us to kind of banter about.
I just found it so hilarious too because they were on a video. They were on a commercial together with freaking State Farm. You know, like it's like the WWE. Just whoever's writing this up is probably former WWE people.
Gotcha.
You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, we got to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are on one, 10 toes down, standing on business right now as they are so far owning the NBA. But is all of that contender or pretender? Man, Shaw's going to speak to that. And then superstar divorces in the making. I know sometimes we talk about it from an entertainment space, but can you really believe that we may actually be doing this in an NBA space? Or we'll be talking about what that all means here on the Baseline. But before we do that, are you craving nonstop hoops action? The NBA League Pass is your ticket to the ultimate basketball experience. Enjoy live games, on-demand replays, and exclusive behind-the-scenes content across a variety of devices. With NBA League Pass, you'll get more. More games, we're talking regular season and select playoff matchups, more features, including multi-view angles, in-depth stats, and behind-the-scenes stories, more access, catching your favorite teams and players anytime, anywhere. Stay up with the NBA like the Baseline does. League Pass is for fans who live the game. Sign up now and type @link.nba.com/LP19MG. More Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw. Don't go anywhere. We are back. Callie Warrenshaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And time for us to talk about a team that is absolutely lit. Don't think we had them on our radar among one of the quote unquote contender-like type teams, but they are playing like they are contenders. So the question is, Shaw, are the Cleveland Cavaliers, from what you're seeing right now, right? Just right now, from what you're seeing right now, are they contender or pretender?
Yeah, right now they are an absolute contender, but we've seen their style before, Cal. Like we've seen them go on really good and long runs within the regular season. It's just the aspect of when they get to the playoffs. One, do they execute in the way that they need to? And two, are they healthy enough to do even all of those things? All that remains to be seen, I think, as we push forward into the doldrums, if you will, of the NBA season into April, May, and June. But right now, this Cavs team looks refreshed, and I got to give all the credit to Kenny Atkinson. You know, kind of early on, or 6-7 games into it, he's unlocked the Evan Mobley that everybody's kind of wanted to see. Well, I won't say it's been perfect basketball from Mobley. Mobley's been more aggressive and has not gotten into the way of Jared Allen when they've been playing together. Darius Garland, also complimentary. Guys like Dean Wade coming in here and doing what they need to do to be able to space the floor appropriately. Donovan Mitchell still being his all NBA level stealth. To me, this is all credit to Kenny Atkinson. 4th in defense right now, 2nd in offense, 3rd in net rating. Everything is clicking for the Cleveland Cavaliers, inclusive of their bench, which I thought was going to be the most suspect part of what they had going on here. But between that and Atkinson, those starters, they're doing a really, really great job to start the season.
I think what's impressed me about this team, Shaw, is their ball movement. And the decisiveness that I'm seeing from their star players. I don't know if whether or not Kenny Atkinson established the pecking order on, who the primary, players are. Sometimes we get a little too into that whole thing. It's like, he has to be the top tier scorer and he has to be the second scorer. Like he has to be 1A and 1B and things of that nature. I think what I'm just really impressed by is, and I saw this the other night when I was watching the Cavaliers take on the Orlando Magic, which obviously, it's a completely different thing when Paolo Banchero is not on the floor. But the decisiveness in excuse me, in Spider Mitchell, with how he was how he was scoring the basketball. To me, it's almost like he read, the scouting report on what it was going to take in order, to jump on this team early. And that to me, I think speaks a lot to the preparation. And to your point, that's where the kudos does go to Kenny Atkinson. I feel like this is a Cavaliers team that is coming in more prepared.
Yeah.
With who they're playing against and how they want to dictate, the way that they want to impose their will against whoever it is they're playing against. And that's just something that you didn't get a sense was always, being embedded in them while JB Bickerstaff was, the head coach. Nothing against JB Bickerstaff, because I think he's a great coach. I do think that this was part of the knock on the fact that he couldn't get over that part of the hump because he just never was able to either make the certain adjustments, or you just didn't see the consistency in this in his team's preparation for who they're being matched up against. Now, again, this is an early sample size, and to your point, Shaw, we don't know what this is going to look like once one of their star players goes down or there's injury that takes place. But I do feel more positive about this version of the Cavs because it just feels like they all know what roles they have to play for them to be this kind of successful through the course of the regular season and for it to carry that momentum going into hopefully that postseason.
Yeah, I'm going to support your point in this way. At this current structure, nobody on this roster is playing over 30 minutes a game. 29.6, you can call it right at 30, but nobody's over 30. And you can attribute to the fact that they've been a couple of the games they've blown the doors off, so those stars don't need to be out there. But that is something too where you're kind of getting that even distribution of minutes across the board from Dean Wade and Sam Merrill, even Isaac Okoro, who could be pouting, talking about, hey, I was a high draft pick, I don't have as large a role on this team that I want to have. Remember, they don't even have Max Strus yet. He hasn't even been able to play a game, and he's somebody else who's going to come back and presumably space the floor for them and defend a little bit as well. Ty Jerome is coming to this, as a guy's been kind of a little bit of a journeyman, but now he's playing well and almost giving them 10 points a game off that bench. To me, this is all attributed to Atkinson and the role definement, as you were alluding to, that he clearly has. He's established a pecking order, and there's nothing like having a coach that brings in the requisite structure. And again, nothing against JB Bickerstaff. We've had him on our show. JB's a friend of the show. We like JB, but something wasn't clicking in the way that at least it is right now with Cavs. And JB went on some runs too. Like I said, I don't want to disparage him in that way, but right now this Cavs teams look different. And a lot of that has to do with the aggressiveness too of Evan Mobley attacking, shooting threes, and not being bullied just because he's air quote slider frame. He's going in there and he's punishing some of those smaller matchups. Great stuff from the Cavs.
Yeah. Do you think, Shaw, do you think that they are getting over this idea that Mitchell is supposed to be saving them? I think part of the struggle that this team has had in the last, year and a half, 2 years under the Mitchell era, so to speak, is this perception that he had to be the one to come in and save these guys, and these guys not realizing the potential of what they can actually help bring to this table to help him, right? It was always like what Mitchell was doing when he was in Utah. He comes over and they're supposed to help make this team so significantly better. I'm just wondering if whether or not they're beginning to recognize that there are just other things they know that they could literally be great at doing. Like you see that with the way that Jarrett Allen commands the center position, that you're seeing that more that confidence more in Mobley, to your point. Yeah. Because I think that what his skill set brings, be it different than what you get from Mitchell, what you get from Garland, that the expectation of what he needs to do and how he has to do it, it's an attitude of being that guy that is saying, I know that I am a mismatch problem for whoever is going to have to D me up. You know what I'm saying? And I need to establish myself. I need to put my foot in the ground, draw that line in the sand about what guys are going to need to do to defend me, rather than worrying about, when Mitchell gets off, when Garland gets off, when Strus gets off. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he doesn't have to worry about that anymore, because I think they all understand that, like, look, if you start doing damage down there in the blocks, if you start doing damage even beyond the three or whatever the case may be, but there's just your level of aggression, it bodes well for everybody in the way that they have to change how they're defending. And that just opens up the floor even more for guys like their backcourts.
For sure. And I think a lot of it too is Garland having the confidence, but I'm going to go back to your earlier point. Donovan Mitchell does not need to be a savior. He needs to just be a leader, not just, but he needs to be a leader. And there are differences in that. And leaders at times will have to save, certain games, as he did in Milwaukee just the other night. That was a very, very close game for them. And Mitchell hits, on a broken play, hits a game-winning jumper in essence, to kind of steal it from them in a very competitive game. But what's not discussed, from our lens, but Donovan Mitchell brought it up at the end of the game, was the possession before that Isaac Okoro dove on the floor and got them the extra possession. That's what I'm talking about. That level of role definement from 1 through 15. Everybody's like, hey, what can I do to help us win, get to that next level? And I don't want to steer it too far into my own fandom, if you will. But I'm going to say this. I think there's a lot of notes being taken on how the Celtics changed the way they played last year, the way Tatum and Brown needed to buy in, the way the rest of that roster, guys like Peyton Pritchard, who was, frankly wanted to be out and leave the team, and they were able to get on the same page. I think we're seeing a similar shift from the Cleveland Cavaliers roster and understanding, you know what? Hey, here are our guys. These are going to be the guys, and everybody else fall in line to do what's necessary. And when your leader, Donovan Mitchell, who hit the game-winning shot, goes to Isaac Okoro and says, hey, it was his play that got us a possession on national TV, that says that there's the appropriate amount of leadership permeating within that locker room. And that's why I think this Cavs run is for real, as long as they can stay healthy.
Listen, to me, this is it's a dangerous team, right? When they get right, and it seems like Kenny Atkinson is unlocking, that part of how they can get right, and that again, I would caution people, watch out for this Cavaliers team, because I don't think we ever questioned the talent. It was a question of whether or not they just, mentally are ready to take that next step. And I think maybe they truly believe that while everyone is saying that this is really a race between the Knicks and the Celtics and maybe the Milwaukee Bucks, which now the way that they're playing, you could almost dispel them out of this. It's like the Cavaliers want that same level of respect, even though they got to earn it. But you feel a little more comfortable about saying the Cleveland Cavaliers are arguably the third best team, even though their record is obviously better than, but they can arguably be the third best team in comparison to who we've been putting up as your top tier teams because of what we have already seen, which is something that we didn't see even all of last year. We always felt like they just got by really on the talent. We knew that they were just a talented team, but unlocking that so that it comes together to see like the potential of greatness that can come from this. I mean, they get into this mix, Shaw. Oh, we're gonna have a hell of an Eastern Conference playoff run.
Oh, they've always had the talent, and going back even to our rankings, they were 6, 7, and 8 respectively. You had them 7, I had them 8, I had them 6, and even that, but they were the team to me that had the most boom or bust potential from that middle tier because of what Donovan Mitchell can bring to that. But Kenny Atkinson is a coach. Like he can do what he does. And, the fact that he did not take that Charlotte job some years ago and was able to kind of land in what seems to be a really great situation for him right now. It's just say, hey, all in time and that it needs to be. And I'm happy for him and the early success that he's had on. Let's just continue to see if the Cavs can maintain it.
Kenny Atkinson, man, he got a little Ray Donovan in him. Little Ray Donovan's probably why he chose to go to the Cavs. He's like, I want to get my Donovan. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, superstar divorces in the making. Yeah, man. Netflix has got a show. Hulu's got the Kardashians, and the NBA has got centers. You'll find out what we're talking about. Don't go away. We are back. Callie Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Final topic conversation, Shaw. Superstar divorces in the making. I mean, we're not trying to, be like the National Enquirer or the Sun or anything like that. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't start speaking on a couple of players who have recently been feeling some kind of way and have been airing out their grievances, so to speak, to the media and the public ear. So Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo have expressed their displeasures with the criticisms and the outright, I guess you could say, tenor and temperament that has been, shifted with either their organizations or themselves. And it's led us to wondering, man, like, damn, like, is it they just are having a moment, or should we be looking at this on a macro lens, right? Like in a macro space that, like, these guys, I think they are lining things up for them to be like throwing up the deuces to their respective teams.
Yeah, and just for a point of clarification, I think the Giannis report, if you're fans of the NBA, you might have saw that, executives are circling and monitoring the situation in Milwaukee as it continues to proverbially get worse here, to see if Giannis would ask out. And Giannis didn't say that out of his mouth, but he has been a little bit more tricky in recent years, about his commitment, But as you were saying off air, like they've done everything in essence to kind of keep him in tow, making the moves around him. They've given him all the money that they wanted to. He's earned all of that money as well, too. But it is a little bit different from the Joel Embiid situation, where I think the media, the organization to some degree, and he don't all have their wires kind of on the same page. Like things are getting a little bit cross-matched.
Oh, they're short-circuiting all over the place.
I think that's a great analogy for it, and it all starts. Well, it doesn't all start, but again, as we all know, to date, Embiid had not played any games. And then there was a quote, from an article by, I believe his name is Marcus Hayes, a well-known Philly journalist, who went out and said Joel Embiid consistently points to the birth of his son, Arthur, as a major inflection point in his basketball career. He often says that he wants to be great, to have a legacy for the boy, named after his little brother who tragically died in an automobile accident when Embiid was in his first year as a 76er. Well, in order to be great at your job, you first have to show up for work. Embiid has been great at just the opposite. Now in his 11th season, he consistently has been poor in his conditioning. This poor conditioning apparently seems to have delayed his debut to the season, as Embiid will not play in the opener and has not played in the beginning game since then. Embiid is ultimately frustrated. And I'm going to play a clip here from Embiid that led up to an altercation that happened over the course of the weekend that we will then now speak on, following the conversations and the altercation, if you will, from Joel Embiid and Marcus Hayes.
I've done it. From what I can tell you, I've broken my face twice. I came back early with the risk of losing my vision. Had broken fingers. I still came back. So I'm not gonna sit here and be when I see people saying he doesn't want to play. I've been way too much. I've done way too much, for this city, and putting myself at risk, for people to be saying that. So I do think it's bullshit. Like that dude, he's not here, Marcus, whatever his name is. I've done way too much for this fucking city to be treated like this. So done way too fucking much. But like I said, I wish I was as lucky as other ones, but that doesn't mean that I'm not trying and I'm not doing whatever it takes to be out there, which I'm gonna be here pretty soon.
So CL, that led to an altercation after the Sixers lost to the Memphis Grizzlies, where Marcus Hayes, the reporter, actually got into the locker room, and Embiid said, "Hey, listen, you can talk about me, you can say I suck, but basically Will Smith him, keep my family's name out your effing mouth." And there's various reports and iterations. We don't even have all the full details, other that Embiid did lay hands on the reporter, pushed him in the shoulder by what people are saying. And then the Philly media team, the Sixers media team, asked people to clear out, and they try to de-escalate. But Embiid was turned up and ready to rock. And he did not care about his professional career because he felt he was assaulted as a human being by the words that reporter had put out there, especially with how sensitive that has to be for anybody who's lost somebody in their family. Your thoughts on, the 76ers situation with Joel Embiid, not just with the reporter, but just kind of in general, is this all kind of leading to what might be a messy divorce with him in the franchise?
Yeah. So I'm glad you laid everything out here with this, right? And I'm going to try to be succinct about this. I'm going to really try. I can completely understand Joel Embiid's frustration. I really could. He has every right to feel frustrated. At the same time, as an athlete, as a professional athlete, and if this is about your legacy, if this is about what you want people to perceive you to being and stuff like that, there's a time and a place for how you go about handling these situations. Okay. So, but this is kind of always been Joel Embiid's problem. It's how he goes about handling the situation. It's not so much as what you say, it's what you do. And I feel like that was a perfect situation where you really should say less and you should really just do more, right? Do more that it puts it on those that are opening up this space for them that have no idea what's going on to speak to that situation, and then you can help dispel that myth. I will say this, right? I don't like when people who say that they are journalists, and I'm not questioning the credentials of Marcus Hayes. I'm not questioning what he's done as a journalist, but this is what happens when what you're supposed to be doing is journalism, but what you are speaking to sensationalizes putting facts out there because you have an opinion about either a player or the situation that's going on with the player. And when you don't define those lines properly, this is what you get, right? You could run the risk of you being blackballed, you not getting access to the star players. And think about it like this too, Shaw. When you put stuff like that out there, what are other guys in that locker room thinking if they confide to speak to certain things and situations, if you're an anonymous source or whatever the case may be, that it's going to allow you to come out and say things in an editorial fashion, in an opinionated fashion that really is not completely based in all of the facts that are going on. You know what I'm saying? I just felt like he took it a step too far. If you want to question Joel Embiid's availability because he's constantly injured and whatever the case may be, no problem. But you don't take his words and then you take that situation, you flip that in some way to say, oh, he's using this as a prop and excuse. You don't know that. You're not there. You're not meant to be there. You're only there to speak to the facts. Had he done that, I don't think we would have gotten to that particular point. But again, if we're just talking about what this does for Joel Embiid, I just think it further cements Joel Embiid he's done with Philly. Not that he wasn't done with them before, but I just think he's literally done with Philly. And I'm going to speak to something, Shaw. We didn't talk about this. I didn't think about this until we were talking about off air, because I was trying to figure out like what's a good correlation to what's going on here. Remember what happened with Derrick Rose? You remember what happened? I'm not talking about everything happening exactly like how it's happening with Joel Embiid. I'm saying there gets to a point where as you as a player, you begin to realize that the situation that's going on is not good for your well-being and your family's well-being and your longevity in the NBA, especially when you're not getting the back of the organization to help you out when it comes to these type of matters. And I feel like this is what's going on now with Joel Embiid. He is at a point where he's just like, look, if you guys can't appreciate what I've done at this point, if you guys can't appreciate the sacrifices I've already made, given the circumstances and everything like that, to heck with you. And I get it. My only concern, though, when it comes to Joel Embiid is the fact that by saying it and doing it in the way that he does, if he's talking about trying to get his bag again or going elsewhere, there's some other organizations, very well-known organizations, you know what I'm saying, traditional, old school, OG organizations are looking at this like, look, as great as he is, do we really want to be throwing out that kind of money for someone like him with that kind of attitude and the way that he handles things? He may not be ready for that limelight that we have in our market if he's talking about being elsewhere.
Yeah, I think very great point, CL. One thing I do want to tap into is, having been somebody who's written before. I've had some access to players, and you do have to think about, okay, well, how am I going to paint this? You can be critical, but you have to be fair. And I think trying to bridge or thread the needle, if you will, to some like the way that he's currently behaving, and be that is as if it's some sort of dishonor to his family is, it's an absurdity that, as somebody who's been in the journalism field, and I don't have the credentials as Marcus Hayes, like I could never. And what irritates me more about this whole situation is it wasn't like a blog, if you will, and the aspect of just saying, okay, well, whatever, I just put this out on my own independent website and I have, millions and millions of followers. No, the Philadelphia Inquirer is a national, media entity with editors. What editors like, yeah, go ahead. You know what? Boom, let's do that and let that be click worthy. Like I just don't understand, that. And I understand it's a tough market to be in, and I understand that it's free press and amendments, and you got to be able to free speech, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a line, I think, of humanity that was crossed here that I don't think they'll all be able to come back from. And DB said, listen, I think he even said, like, I read some other stuff this morning, and they're like, well, he apologized in the moment. And he's like, I don't want your effing apology. Like, it's too late. Like you've already crossed the line. Like it's forever beef.
Right.
Like Nas said, some beefs are everlasting. And I think with that, if Embiid ultimately then asks out, I don't know. I don't want to say that this is the straw, if you will, but it certainly hasn't helped. And meanwhile, Paul George, flies himself over from the LA Clippers. He too is yet to play a game. And he's sitting here like, yo, what the F is going on? I thought I left some drama on the West Side. I come over here to Philly, and it's just as much drama kind of going on in the same situation. It's so early. The Sixers can right the ship here from a record standpoint and, go on to win a bunch of games and be competitive in the Eastern Conference. That I don't want to overstate or understate that fact, but it's not great. It's not great to where we are. And if Embiid were ever to be like, you know what, I've had enough of all of this stuff. Yeah. The problem with that, last thing I'll say, is that he has a general manager who plays hardball when it comes to that. You saw the Ben Simmons things played out. You saw the James Harden things played out. So if Embiid were to ask out, it's not going to be a pleasant situation, I think, for all parties involved. And Daryl Morey is very comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Real quick, because I want to go over to the Giannis thing real quick as well too, Shaw. But here's the problem, right? It's a problem that both Daryl Morey and Joel Embiid have. What do you have to stand on for you to play hardball? Morey has not led this team to an Eastern Conference Finals. Morey has not gotten them to an NBA Finals. And Joel Embiid, for all his efforts, yes, he's got an MVP, but what does that mean? Nothing, because there's still other teams that are still better than his team, and that will wind up still being favored even if they make it into the playoffs. You get what I'm saying? So clearly there is a problem here. And I guess what I was trying to do, and I know at some point, y'all, we're going to revisit this because Joel Embiid is he is good at, egging things on. You know what I'm saying? And he's willing to take it. That's the one thing I think people forget, man. He doesn't do this without knowing that he is going to shoulder this and he will carry this, whether you want to consider it petty, whatever. He will shoulder that. That's fine. What I'm just saying is that for Joel Embiid and what his future may hold and what his future may tell, because his legacy is already immersed in the process. And we're now at this particular stage now. Now we're going to move to another stage should he choose to go elsewhere. Do you really want that perception to carry with you that everywhere you go, it's always this, this level of I don't want to use the word chaos, but it's just.
Well, he's only been in one place, so it can't say everywhere he's gone. He's only been in one spot.
No. But I'm saying the iterations of your career. Let me use that better. The iterations of your career. Do you want another iteration of your career be versed in controversy and chaos of things, right? Like, because even when he makes comments like, I don't see myself playing back to back, why are you saying anything about that? You know what I'm saying? The season hasn't even started, and you're already speaking about things that even you don't know whether or not you can and can't do. You know what I'm saying? And so that all you're doing is.
Let me interject from this standpoint, because and we say this all the time, right? And we had a lot of conversation about even that, but we as media members, podcasters as a whole, it's so strange. Like, we do, and I'm not criticizing you. I want to be clear about that. But we want it both ways. We get frustrated when, players are, oh, well, great game. I tried hard, blah, 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 blah. And then when they give us something to talk about, as we have now been talking about for the last couple of weeks, like, we also hold them to a different standard too, as well as too. Like, it's a weird juxtaposition, but I agree in the aspect of the statement itself came seemingly out of left field, because I don't know how he got to that end conclusion that, yeah, this might be something for the rest of my career, not just, this year as he's trying to, maintain or injury manage, if you will. But Embiid is somebody, as we continue to say, and as you just said a little while ago, he knows how to push buttons, but he seems to be like somebody who wants to also pick and choose when the buttons can be pushed back on him. And that's where I think we're having an overall disconnect.
Yeah, but he ain't Kevin Durant, right? Kevin Durant can push buttons all he wants, but he has got a resume that allows him. You know what I'm saying? We sat here, we questioned the way he goes about doing things. Oh my God, childish, petty, whatever. But he's been consistent. He's never told you differently. He's never shied away, and nothing is not without it being deliberate. So that's when you know that Kevin Durant knows exactly what he's doing. There are times where you wonder, like, are you really doing this for the greater good or whatever your own purpose is? Or is it just you're in your moment, you're in your feelings, and you just got played? Like, you got duped into coming out and saying something like this when it didn't even need to be said. And I'm not saying it because I want it to be a boring, yeah, of course we want to have conversations and we want there even to be some controversy. But I do think that some of the comments that he is making, I don't see where that even is beneficial in the general sense, with what we talk about with the NBA culture. And for someone who is an MVP player, right? If Nikola Jokic was doing this, we would be like, what the heck is what's going on here? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, cats will be rolling in their graves who are former MVP players, be like, I would never say that. I would never say that. Like, that's just absurd. You know what I'm saying? All I'm saying is that I don't know. Like, it's coming from a different space. Finally, Shaw, I just want to get to this thing real quick about Giannis, and it was something that we were talking about off the air. With Giannis Antetokounmpo, my biggest pet peeve is that if Giannis wants out, right? Very much so. But
he hasn't said that. Let's be clear.
If he wants out, I honestly think that he should, because I don't know if there's just some miss going on with the way that the organization sees what kind of team Giannis should have around him, or whether or not Giannis's influence about the kind of players and the roster and what I don't know if it's completely all salted in. It's all baked into this idea that, you know, Giannis has a full say of what's going on. Me personally, again, this is conspiracy theory thought process here. I still think that Giannis is still hung over at the way things were handled with them moving Drew Holiday off that roster. And while I know that he gets along with Damian Lillard and everything like that, there's nothing about this team from the last 2 years that you've seen that gives the feel that he has control of what's going on. It's either that or Giannis doesn't care. And we're like putting the blame on everybody else and not really focusing on how Giannis does not have that it factor in him, like that, you know, that monster desire that, you know, we saw prior to winning that championship. And it's not something where I'm blaming him. What I'm saying is it's just like, you don't get the feel that this is going to be like that Bucks team that we were so enamored and gunning for and saying, we hope Giannis gets that first ring. We're not seeing those iterations of those type of Bucks teams since they won that championship.
I'll back this up by saying, for me, with Giannis, I think he has created for a very long time, like the humble superstar. Like that's been the MO and that he's operating within. After you receive a certain level of success, you win multiple MVPs, you win an NBA championship, it's very hard to maintain that same level of humility. You're just operating within a different air. Like what you do is different. It is. And I'm not excusing it, but I think we're starting to see the aspect of him now truly being into stardom and what that means and how an organization capitulates to what his whims are as a generational type franchise player that he is. So the nice guy who came from the humble beginnings, all those things are still true. But it's like how we talk about, you know, with rappers, like at some point, yeah, you're rapping about being on the street, but now, hey, you're making millions and millions of dollars now. So you're not cooking up crack anymore, bro. like that's not the same life. You are in a different space now. You're sipping champagne and you're going to the Met Gala or whatever the case may be. So your aura is different. And as a result, your position changes. And I think that's what we're seeing with Giannis. Everything that made him who he is, very much the crux of those things, but he's changed somewhat. And his level of expectation is different. And the organization is feeling the results of that. And they've answered to that. But if he does ultimately want to ask out, I would not be surprised. And, you know, for rival executives to be circling, maybe there's smoke. But, you know, and again, where there's smoke, there's fire. And whether that ends up being Brooklyn and New York, a very demanding market that would completely elevate his shoe game and all those other things, or an organization like Miami, you know, with their culture building efforts and things of that nature, I don't know that Giannis is going to be a Buck, you know, for the rest of his career. So I want to throw this question back to you, kind of dual fold. Betting man, would you bet that Joel Embiid and or Giannis will be on their respective teams for the entirety of their career? Or which one would you think, we don't need to name a team, or do you think which one would potentially ask out, or would they both ask out?
I see the Bucks probably figuring out a way. I don't think Giannis hates the Milwaukee Bucks, but I don't think he is enamored with the way that the Bucks organization is structured. And I think if there is another unsuccessful campaign that takes place, like say this year, I think they're cleaning house. I think Horst will be on his way out the door. Rivers will be on his way out the door. And you start from scratch again with Giannis again saying, I told you so, right? Like, so, you know, like maybe now they'll value with what he really wants and desires as to how he sees this team a little bit, as far as what he wants to, kind of have on that court. You know what I mean? Like he wants guys that roll with him like that. Okay. But to your point, could be a different perspective. As it comes to Joel Embiid, he's out. I'm sorry, man. Like you just don't say the kind of things that you're saying right now. If you're Joel Embiid and if you're Daryl Morey, I don't know how you save, because unless he wins a championship, which you tell me, Shaw, you think the Philadelphia 76ers as constructed right now is going to win a championship?
I mean, as constructed right now, no, but they have other moves to make. And we have not seen what is supposed to be the best iteration of this team take the court yet. So I need PG and Embiid to play some games alongside Maxey. Give me 15, 20 games to kind of assess what that looks like for their long-term outlook. But right now, it seems like we may never get that. But I don't want to be too much of a prisoner of the moment there until I can see what they look like, cohesively.
How long does Embiid have on this contract?
I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, that's obviously something, can kind of look up, because didn't he just re-sign? I think that was last summer. So he's probably got, 3 years and, maybe a player option of something.
I mean, if Embiid, you know what I'm saying, quote unquote, gets the what do you call it? Gets the gauntlet. If he chooses to try and snap his fingers to make the existence of the remaining of his contract go away so he can leave the Philadelphia 76ers, then I think we'll worry. I'm just saying, if there's anyone more incentivized, to demand to get out from underneath all of this, it will probably be Joel Embiid. But I think
2 years left. So as you're talking, there's 2 years left. So this year and next year, no options or anything like that nature. So, he's going to be extension eligible here. And so, will he play out all of next season? That remains to be seen, understanding that would be his last year after they just signed Paul George, for a 4-year deal. This could get really, really interesting here quickly for the Philadelphia 76ers.
They're going to have to win a championship. This is the only way that you may be able to salvage having Joel Embiid there, because I think as far as he's concerned, with maybe the exception of Tyrese Maxey, which it doesn't necessarily have to be about the player or players as much as it is about the organization doing what's necessary to have his back. And I tend to wonder at times of whether or not the organization truly does have Joel Embiid's back. I think if they did, Joel Embiid would not be coming out saying some of the things that he's been saying. They would have basically curtailed a lot of this already. And maybe they just, capitulate because he is their star and they find it funny and it's cute and all this other kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, he is accelerating the timetable of fans' demand that this team gets to an NBA Finals. You know what I'm saying? Like, they want to start seeing results. Like, they don't want to hear Joel Embiid talking anymore. They want to see him on the court producing MVP-like kind of numbers, because he essentially teased them. Hey, I'm an MVP-worthy player. But my problem is I still have not figured out a way, either one, to stay healthy, or two, to put my best performance when it matters most to get us to the Eastern Conference Finals and ultimately the NBA Finals.
This is their best year, and I'll close with that. This is their best year. He's got to stay healthy. PG's
it certainly doesn't help that we were talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers just before we were the Cleveland Cavaliers, Shaw, have entered the chat. Yeah. Okay, so that does not help.
Because the Sixers and the Bucks have failed here to be in beginning part of the season. So while two teams that we thought were going to be at the top, they are struggling here to begin the season. But it's only 6-7 games in. Plenty of time for things to turn around and turn around both sides, and whatever injuries could happen to anybody at any point. You're a sprained ankle away from dropping 3-4 spots in the Eastern Conference. So we're wishing all these teams the best of health, and hopefully that they will all be fully whole and we'll be able to see a competitive Eastern Conference the way that we thought we were going to going into the season.
Absolutely. So what say you, listeners, right? Like, if you had to be a betting man, who do you think would be out the door first for their organization? Would it be Joel Embiid or Giannis Antetokounmpo? Or does hell freeze over? The idea for both. Weigh in on your thoughts, man. We'd love to get your perspective on this. As always, Shaw, another awesome show. Great discussion. You know what I'm saying? Definitely livens things up right before we get ready for NBA Cup.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Wait for the NBA Cup here. Klay Thompson making a return to Golden State, I think, in the premier game for Dallas and Golden State there. So we'll have much to have some conversations about that here in the coming weeks. But this has been a live one. Hope our fans and listeners enjoyed it. And let us know your thoughts here on all of that. We had beefs, we have injuries, and we got speculation on superstar divorces, man. A lot of great stuff. You know what I mean? Like a novella at this point.
Yeah, exactly, man. We just attract speculation everywhere we go.
Love it.
For another speculative episode that I can't wait to have with my brother from another mother, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw. Once again, we appreciate everybody for hopping on board with us this week with the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw. We appreciate you guys. You know we do. And we'll catch up with you next time.